Peterbot.
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 The Peterbot destruction is the best players in Fortnite history.
It finally happened. After dominating every single tournament, winning 3 FNCSs in a row and more cash cups than I can count, Peterbot has finally been dethroned by none other than his old duo, Pollo, and nobody saw this coming. This starts all the way back in October of 2024 when FNCS for Chapter 6 was announced to be trios. This was shortly after the Global Championship, so everyone was ready to start playing with their new teammates. However, at this point, Peter and Pollo were still together. During this time, trio cash cups had just began, so players could start figuring out who they were going to play with. However, most pros didn't play with their actual teammates for FNCS since it was still very far away, and this goes for the Global Champs as well. But once we started getting closer, some teams started to solidify, and at first, Peterbot and Pollo picked up Bolts, who was already a phenomenally good player, starting to rise up more in the scene for how mechanically good he was. But then, seemingly out of nowhere, Peterbot would tweet out looking for Trio, officially saying that he had dropped Pollo.
Me and Poyo are split up for trios, chat. And me and Cole, they're like just gonna play with a Tarper. That's basically what we're doing, chat. And I'm not trolling either.
And it wouldn't be too long from now where one of the scariest teams in Fortnite would form, that being Cold, Ritual, and Peterbot. P had already played lots of tournaments in the past with both of them, and since they were already looking for teammates, it had just made sense that this trio would come together, and nobody was ready for the dominance they would bring this season. Everyone started to get flashbacks to Peterbot in Chapter 5 Season 2 with the Grim Gate coin because they started winning everything. People would win 4 evaluation cups, every single trio cash cup, and 1 solo cash cup to top it off. Pretty much every single person thought he would win FNCS, including me. But Pollo this entire time was waiting in the dark, plotting his revenge. Throughout the last year, it had been Peterbot's name everyone was talking about and chanting. To some people, Pollo just seemed to be the lucky player who was his teammate. However, this was far from the truth. People who knew Fortnite knew Pollo was one of the best players in the world. But now that he was out of Peterbot's shadow, it was time for him to finally prove that. At the beginning of the season, Pollo decided to stick with Bolts and pick up Rapid, another very good player. And they ended up performing extremely well, placing high in most tournaments, even getting 2 seconds in the weekly finals. But just 1 week before FNCS began, everything would take a massive turn. Since FNCS was almost here, everyone was making last-second roster changes in order to make sure they had the best chance of doing well. That's when Acorn and Agers started talking around trying to find somebody to replace Kanata. Pollo couldn't refuse this offer and decided to drop his teammates and trio with them since they were much more experienced. This was a very good team on paper, and they would end up backing it up in-game after placing second in the last cash cup of the season. After this, the FNCS qualifiers were finally here. However, it was a breeze for both Peterbot and Pollo to make it to the grand finals. With Pollo once again in Pete's shadow, everyone thought for the 4th season in a row, Peterbot was going to run away with it. After all, he had the best drop spot locked down, won pretty much every single trio cup, and had 2 of the best players in the world on his team. But Acorn, Agers, and Pollo had other plans. This trio drops at Night Shift Forest, which is one of the better drops on the map because of the 6 potential elemental chest spawns, which have a high chance at dropping a Void Mask. Early on, Pollo drops away from Acorn and Agers in order to loot up quickly and push south towards Bird in order to get early Storm Surge damage. One of the best perks about this drop is the amount of slurp barrels it has. Because of this, they can save up all the heals they find and use the extras to heal up if they get damaged. While Pollo's off looking for damage, Acorn and Agers make sure to loot the rest of the POI as quick as possible. After everyone finishes their loot route, it's time for them to rotate to this one single building here that won them the FNCS Grand Finals. Since this POI is more towards the middle of the map and there's no teams dropping to the right of them, they're able to rotate more towards the center for free. Once they get to this area here, Pollo starts building a surge base and continues to look for damage. While he does that, Ager's job is to farm back all of the materials and pick up any extra heals around them. But it's Acorn who has the most important job, and that's to fish. This one building here has fishing rods and a pool of water, and for the next couple zones, literally all Acorn does is fish. Quickly, if you're enjoying the video, make sure to subscribe because only 5% of you watching actually are, and it helps me out a lot. Since he's doing this, Pollo and Agers can aggressively peek in order to make sure they get Storm Surge damage, which is the most important thing to get in a Grand Finals lobby. And they make sure to milk every single last moment of it. In fact, they sit here for so long that most games they end up being in zone holding teams since they know they have tons of heals. Once there's no more teams around them, it's finally time for them to rotate, which they do by simply using the Void Mask, making sure to follow Acorn, who is extremely good at cutting off lines of sight from other trios. For the most part, they just use the Void Mask to rotate, but sometimes the fishing doesn't stop. For example, in Game 2 of Grands, the zone continued to pull towards water. So knowing this, Acorn decides to keep a fishing rod in order to get even more heals for his teammates later on. And that's not it. Sometimes they go in old teams' boxes who are obviously fishing in order to get more free fish and loot since they know the team's not there anymore. Okay, enough talking about fish since we're finally heading towards the end game. It's right before the moving zones begin where they all start scouting everywhere for a possible refresh. They like to do this at this time since 1, it is easy to get teams lobby focused, and 2, teams are preoccupied figuring out where the zone is going to be so they're not super focused on teams around them. Now this trio is extremely versatile, meaning they're able to play literally every single layer perfectly, but this is how they usually do it. First, they use their Void Mask to put themselves on a decent layer front side. From here, Acorn leads, typically opting to stay on a higher mid-ground layer towards one of the edges of the zone since that's dead side. Acorn really is one of the best IGLs and tarpers out there, perfectly finding layers for them to play on and making sure they have enough space to look for refreshes. Speaking of refreshes, during this whole time, Poyo and Agers are looking for kills together, while also making sure their backs are blocked off in case a team tries to sneak up on them. Since this trio has 2 of the best fraggers, they do a phenomenal job at getting kills together, which is a massive factor in how they do so well. Acorn continues to put them on good layers, and it's typically around the switch in the 3rd moving zone where they make a big play. Usually they are able to get at least 1 good refresh at this point in the game, so they have good materials and white heals. What they like to do in a lot of their games is run back and tank some zone together. This allows them to see where height is at and what layer they can possibly go to. In this game, they see height is just sitting there and it just so happens to be on cold, so they're able to get an easy kill and then void up and take height. From here, they all sit up on height, just sitting there and spraying down together. Then when it gets closer to the final moving zone, Agers and Acorn drop down and try to get some kills while Poyo stays on top. Now this match, Agers and Acorn almost ended up selling, but because Poyo was sitting up top, he was able to clutch the win. Now this actually wasn't the only time they were able to take height. Another one of the matches, they saw that nobody was going for it, so they were simply able to just take it for free during the first moving zone. So yeah, sometimes things aren't super complicated. So that was a scenario where they take height. So what happens when they tank zone and don't go for it? While they're in zone, they scout out to find the best layer, then they void front side there. This play obviously helps them save out on a bunch of materials and puts them in a very good position. From here, Acorn continuously switches layers, making sure that they are all staying on top of each other no matter where they try to claim. These games we looked at were all on day 1, and a lot of the matches where they kept switching layers and a bit sketchy, and a couple of games Agers had the solo clutch like crazy, which was a big reason for them pulling ahead. At the end of the day, they were in first place by almost 100 points, with Peterbot in second right behind them. Everyone was shocked since it seemed like Peterbot, Ritual, and Cold had a bit of an off day, but that still doesn't take away from the fact that Poyo's trio was playing almost perfectly. Now we're headed into day 2, and it's here where it's a make or break for this team. I say this because 1, teams have a chance to completely reset their mentals, like obviously Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual. But most importantly, creating a new game plan, which lots of the times involves griefing another team. And since they have one of the best mid-game spots in the game for free, it was possible someone could try to take it. And in fact, this is exactly what a team would try to do in game 1 on day 2. This team ended up rotating very early on and basing up. However, this trio is very confident in their fighting skills, and they knew if they backed down now, their entire Grands could be ruined. So they decided to make this play, which was possibly the reason they won FNCS, and that was the W key this trio. Luckily, this wouldn't really turn into a fight with the other team disengaging. However, because of this one engagement, they were able to solidify this spot for the rest of Grands. Throughout day 2, this trio used the exact same strategy as day 1, continuing to gain points, staying in first place, with Agers occasionally solo clutching again. Now they might have still been dominating, however Peterbot was slowly climbing his way back. We're now headed into the final game of Grands, and off the back of an insane solo clutch in game 11 by Peterbot, the tournament was still anyone's to win, but nobody was ready for one of the closest and most exciting endings in FNCS history to happen. After that clutch, Peterbot had managed to make the point difference 59, meaning it was still very possible for them to win. However, this is still a very big gap, and considering the win is 65 points, they needed to have a big kill win in Poyo's trio to go down early for them to have a chance. Because of this, many thought Peterbot might leave his drop and land on Poyo in order to take the fight to them, like we saw all the way back at the FNCS Invitationals. However, this wouldn't happen. Instead, they would opt to try and drop a big kill game. So with nobody knowing what to expect, it was finally time for one of the most intense matches of Fortnite ever played.
Right, they have everything riding on the line. I mean, everything to lose. Really trying to challenge this team, but still, ultimately, you have to perform up to the standard. And
hey, at this stage in the game, we'd at least 500 damage. Pollo's down. Pollo is down. Acorn, Agers, they're scrambling, and Agers is down as well. First place under pressure. This opportunity go.
There's another team on the south. Could it be Muzz, Rise, and Jacopo? So they're good on that front. That's enough to bring them back into this game, but the heals definitely looking worse for wears. Meanwhile, Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual continue to make up the point gap. They have arguably more elims now. They're at 7, starting to break away with the lead here, playing for the high ground position as well.
12. Monster, once it gets to top 8, that's half of the placement points allowed in the lobby as they drop another team into the lobby, grab those eliminations.
Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual. Look at how aggressive, look at how hungry they are to try to secure as many eliminations as possible right now. As who it is that's up top, it's now. Peterbot goes up, putting it all on the table. He's got the high ground, Acorn forcing low. The pressure's trying to come in. Agers has to run. Will he get away? That's a shot. I think they know exactly who they're chasing. Couple tags though, not enough. Meanwhile, Poyo Acorn is starting to get dismantled here. One's gonna fall, but elimination falls.
Few points remain. Peterbot's going for the eliminations, drops in, and he finds the medallion along the way. He was the one that took out Cold. Looking to take out Pollo. Agers is underneath, but they're narrowly surviving. You see the material count, the resources running dangerously low, and Pollo goes down. Agers now stuck to the backside of Cold. First place down. It's up to Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual to storm the line.
What is he gonna do? He's very, very hurt here, but he's putting the pressure on, and this is what pros do. They continue to push, even against all odds here. His teammate comes up. Cold is there to support him. They force him down to low ground, and somehow Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual get the elims and win the game.
Despite getting a 16 kill win in the last game, it was not enough to overtake the insane consistency of Poyo, Acorn, and Agers, the trio FNCS champions. This win finally proved to everyone once and for all that Poyo is one of the best players in the world and is the real GOAT of North America, officially becoming the second player ever to win 4 FNCSs in a row, and of course dethroning his old duo along the way. Now that Poyo has finally been able to step into the spotlight, it'll be interesting to see if he can continue to stay out of his old duo's shadow and continue to win over the course of this year. But regardless of what happens, this FNCS will go down in the history books as nothing less than iconic. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and check out one of these videos here. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your days. Peace out.